Right, I think that'll be enough time for everyone to join, so we can just get started. So, hi everyone, thank you for coming to today's webinar. It will be on automating project life cycles and creating business process flows in project for the web. So, just a quick introduction. Hi, my name's Jake. I am a MWM consultant in the modern work management team for CPS. I work in mainly projects for the web, but I also do a fair bit of poll work as well. So just a little bit about CPS. So CPS, Microsoft partner at work across full Microsoft stack. We're a 13 times Microsoft Gold partner, and we have a number of accredited advanced specializations. We have several Microsoft MVPs, and we're also considered a great place to work. If you want any more information about that, you can just request for it, drop us an email, and we can send some information over. So, on to today's agenda. Today we'll just be looking at understanding lifecycle stages, setting lifecycle stages, setting stage gate checklists, understanding further automation regarding those lifecycle stages using Power Automate, and then just towards the end, a Q&A and next steps. So, first things first, what are business process flows and lifecycle flows within Project for the Web? So, if you have a project lifecycle, this can be you move between stages of a project. So there's a couple of examples along the bottom here. It depends widely, depends on how your organization happens to manage projects, but it's essentially just a sequence of phases that a project will go through during its life cycle. So in the bottom left, in the donuts for instance, you can see that it starts at the initiation phase, goes through to the planning phase, then into the execution phase, then the monitoring and control, and finally the closure phase. So pretty straightforward. There's a couple more examples here. They all follow the same sort of structure of going pretty much in a straight line throughout the life cycle of the project.
Apologies for that, everyone. Just a couple of technical issues on my end, but I'll pick up where I left off just with this sort of drop-down list. So in a life cycle, you can have something pretty straightforward in the form of just a simple drop-down list, which making a couple of choice options of initial, delivery, close, and benefits realization. And what that looks like is if I go into a demo system here, within my demo system, I have a couple of options in my stage column here. If I click on this drop down, I have all of those choices. It does have a couple of benefits in the form of the fact that it's quite simple. It doesn't require too much complexity to set up. You can still have some degree of automation around it. And you can set up sort of business rules so it hides specific fields when certain areas are selected. But the main issues with it are it's a little bit too simple, so you can't really have quite complex flows around it. You can't really have nice sort of graphics, so it is a bit too simple in what it can do. The next option is an actual business process flow itself. So you've got a quick glimpse of the demo system just. Here's what it pretty much looks like. You can have a pop-out section for columns where you can mandate certain columns that you need for each stage. And what that looks like is just at the top here. So I have my project table, I have my project, and just at the top I have my lifecycle flow. It's a nice little graphic. There's quite a lot that you can do in terms of automation and complexity. This is just a pretty simple one. Whenever I click into any of these circles here, it pops out one of those lists where I can choose what columns I might want. So in this delivery section here, it just has overall RAG, time, cost RAG, quality, and resource. And all of these columns are set to be required. So I can't move to the next stage until all of these columns are entered. So if I click on next stage here, it'll take a second or two, but it will push it over to this close stage. So pretty straightforward. There isn't too much complexity going on with this one at the moment. The third option is just building on top of the business process flows a little bit more, and that's adding a degree of automation. So for this business process flow, all that's been added is a simple sort of approval flow. And what that looks like is whenever I pop out my little tab, there'll be an option now for running a flow. I'll click my run flow and it will send out an email for approval. And what that looks like is if I pop this out, I click on my run flow. It might take a second or two for a couple of these pages to load. And if it is the first time you do run any of these flows, it can take maybe about 5 minutes or so for an email to actually appear. So I click run. What that will do now is that will start the process of sending an email. If I go into Outlook here, what that email looks like, hopefully it will arrive shortly. But what it looks like is you get a little notification from Microsoft Power Automate. You can, within the subject of the email, you can say, please approve, or there's a project requires your attention. You can customize what it is you want around that. But it'll give you an option of either approving the project or rejecting it. Now, as you can see, that's just come through. It took probably about a minute and a half, 2 minutes. So I'll click on this. I have my approve or reject. And there's also a link to the item. So if I click on this, this will take me straight into my project, which was called Automated Software Installation. Yep, so it'll take me straight in here. So I can check any of the fields that might need checking for approval. And then once I'm happy with it, I can either approve or reject it. So if I submit this now for approval, it will update my email saying this has been approved. And then when I go back into my project and refresh the page, you can see that it's moved from initiation to delivery. So there is quite a lot that you can do on this third option of adding automation. You can add historical records. There's the ability to add comments on why it's been approved or rejected. But for the time being, we're just using a very simple send an email and request an approval. So first thing we're going to do is we're just going to create a simple business process flow based off of one of the examples shown earlier, which is on the bottom here. So in order to do that, first I just need to go to Microsoft Edge, Google Chrome, and then if I just type in make.powerapps.com, and this will take to the back end of Power Apps where I can start creating an app or creating a process flow, whatever it might be. I'll go into my solutions. I'll find the solution I want to use, and this one should have a big called test. And then within my test solution, there is a section called processes. Now, this is where your life cycles, your business process flows will get stored. We want to create a new one, and there is an important caveat to note regarding business process flows, and that's whenever you create one, the business process flow will create a new table. So this project lifecycle has a little table in the back end around this. What that means is it does class it as a custom table, and say if you're on your licenses, I believe the P3 has a maximum of 15 tables allowed, or 15 custom tables. What it means is don't create too many of these life cycles, otherwise you might go over your subscription. But in order to create one, it's very straightforward. Just in this new section here, I click on new. There's an option here for automation, and then at the bottom, process. There'll then be an option for business process flow, and in here I can give it a name. So for this one, I'll just call this lifecycle demo. What I'll then want to do is I want to link it to the table that I want it to appear in. So if I want it to appear within project request, I'll link it to that. But for the time being, I'll just link it back to project. So within here, if I just search for project and then click create, this can take a minute or two. It does unfortunately use the old Microsoft UI in Power Apps. It's a little bit slower to use, I find, but once it's done, you should have something that looks like this. Now, this is just the process flow designer that you get. It's relatively straightforward to use. Along the top left is where you've got your main sort of buttons and functionality. You can cut stages, you can copy stages, paste, delete, and you can add them. If I click on this add, there is a couple of options of what I can do. I can add stages, I can add conditions, I can add data steps, workflows, action steps, and flow step. And if I want to add stages, what that looks like is, if it lets me click on it, if it ever starts playing up like this, where you're trying to actually select it, either be persistent in trying to select it, or on the far right, you can click this component section and it opens up a similar sort of menu where you just select, say, stage, drag and drop it over onto this plus, and then you'll get a new stage. So if I'm building this example here, I want 5 stages. So if I just drag and drop these in, like so, I've got my 5 stages, then I'll just want to start naming them. So if I click on my first stage here, on the right hand side, there is a display name. So on here, all I'll do is I'll just copy these names down. So project conception. And then I'll just click apply. And it's important to make sure you do click apply because it's very easy to not click it. If you don't, it won't save. So as you can see now, this stage here is called project conception. So if I just do that for the other 4, so project definition, project launch, performance, and then finally project control. I've now named all of my stages. What I want to do next is I want to start working on the drop-down lists of information that I can add into the actual stages, which are these columns here. Now, I can add any column within the table that I'm working on. So because I'm working on the project table, I can add any column within here. Now, in order to add in some of the data, all I have to do is click on this little detail drop down here with the little chevron, pop that out, and then there'll be an option here for data step. Now, data step is just looking at a column. So on the right hand side here, where I've got my properties, there's an option here for data field. Now, if I click on this list here, it gives me all of the columns that are within my projects table. So if I just wanted, say, the owner as a field, I'll just select that, select owner out of that list, and then I can choose whether I want it to be required or not. So I might want the owner to be required in order for people to move from conception to definition. I'll then just click apply, like so. And as you can see, it updates the step name with the name of the data field, and on the left, it's updated that data step. I also might want to add a couple more bits of data. So if I click on my add column here, or my add button here, sorry, underneath composition, there's an option to add data step. So if I click on that and then add that underneath my owner, I'll then just choose another field. So this one might be the ID. So if I then click apply again, exact same as before, it's updated with the ID name there, and then I've got two options of data. Now, what you'll want to do is you'll want to go through each of these sort of data steps and update it with relevant information that you might want for each stage. So for project definition, I might want, say, description. For project launch, I might want, say, the start date. For project finish, I might want the, or project performance, sorry, I might want the, I might want a health rag. Let's see if I can find one. Rag. Can't find a rag in this list at the moment. I'll use issue count instead. And then on project control, I might want, say, finish date. So once I've done that, I've got my little life cycle set up here. It's got all the bits of data and columns that I might want. All I have to do now is click save at the top. And this might take a minute or so. And then once it's saved, I then just want to activate my flow. Activating it essentially just turns it on so that when you're inside of your app, you'll be able to see it. Think of it as just like a button that turns it on or off. If you don't want to see it, you can just turn it off if you want to. But once it's activated, this process can take a couple of minutes or so, and it can make the page unresponsive, as you can see at the top here. But once it's activated, what you then have to do is publish the customizations within the solution if the server wants to activate. being very low. But once it's activated, all we then have to do is go back into our solution here. Yeah, so that's now turned on, and then just publish the customizations. When the customizations are published, all this does is just update the app for us, so that we'll then be able to see this lifecycle demo process flow inside of it. So when this is done, hopefully this doesn't take too long. When that's done, we can go into our app and find a project or whatever the table is you happen to be working in. All I have to do then is just refresh the page. So if I give this a refresh, it will still have this project lifecycle flow, the one that we worked on originally. All we have to do is just change which flow it's looking at. In order to do that, it just needs to actually load, but at the top here, there is an option for process. So if I click on this process drop down and then go on to switch process here, I can then see my lifecycle demo flow within this list. And then when I click on OK, it then swaps out the flow that I was just working on for this flow that I've just created. So if I click on these drop downs, as you can see, it's got the options that I selected. We'll go on to the next stage. It's got the description, etc., etc. So pretty straightforward setup. What I might want to do within this flow now that I've got a basic one set up is just add in my approval Power Automate flow. And in order to do that, it's very straightforward. I go into my business process flow here, and in details, all I do is click add. That doesn't seem to want to work. All I do is find this flow step. I'll drag that into my business process flow like so, and then I can select which Power Automate flow I want to use. Now, if you haven't got one set up beforehand, they are relatively straightforward to set up. If I go into Power Automate, like that, and you can get there typing in either make.powerautomate.com or searching or clicking on the app launcher within Power Apps here, and then just selecting Power Automate. So once I'm in Power Automate, I can then go on to my flows, and I can either create a flow from scratch, or if you already have one existing, you can edit it. Now, I won't go through the full process of making this Power Automate flow because it's quite long and tedious. I'll show you what these steps look like, and they are as follows. So when a flow step is executed, it gets the project lifecycle record. So this is just looking at the project lifecycle flow or the project lifecycle table. Now, what I want to do is I might want to change this to look at my demo lifecycle. So if I change the table of that to look at that instead, I've then swapped around what the flow is actually looking at. But I want this to look at your business process flow table. The next step is just getting the project's record information. And then the next step is start and wait for approval. So all this is where it sends out an email, as you saw earlier here, with a approve or reject. There's a couple little bits of information here. All I've done is say, please approve. I've added the user email and then created a link to a project. Finally, there's just a condition here that is based on the outcome of that approval. So if the outcome is equal to approve, then it switches between a specific stage. So it will update the project lifecycle business process flow instance with the different stages. Now, again, I won't go through a process of making all of this because it can be quite tedious. But what I'll do is I'll create my flow that looks like this, save it. I'll then go back to my business process flow. And then within this flow step here, on the right-hand side, there is an option to select a flow. Within here, all I have to do is click on the search bar, search for demo, or I could just click the little magnifying glass icon. I'll scroll down this list and then just find whatever my flow is called. So this one's called lifecycle approval. I'll then click apply and then change the display name to approval, just so I know that it doesn't say new step. Once that's done, I'll then just update the flow at the top so it pushes it through. Now again, this might take a little while to do, but I won't waste time just sitting here watching it. But what will then happen is within this flow, it will get that little approval button, which looks like, if that wants to open, wrong one, sorry. Click on the process. What it looks like is on the project lifecycle is you will have this little approval bit here that says run flow. So as we saw earlier, when that's pressed, it will then send out an email. So in terms of setting up a flow, as you've seen, it can be relatively straightforward. It can be quite complex. It entirely depends on how you and your organisation manage life cycles and want them set up. You can have it as a drop-down list, and then you can have automation based around that with business rules and Power Automate flows. You can have it as that nice sort of graphic along the top with an actual business process flow itself, where you can move between stages and mandate certain fields to go across stages. And then finally, you can add quite complex flows that update fields, that send out emails, etc., etc. So they can be as straightforward or as complex as you require. So in terms of next steps, so if you need any help with business process flows or any help regarding automating business process flows, you can send us an email. We can get back to you and give you some help, or give you a free 45-minute session trying to build one or information around it. So we'll just move on to the Q&A sections. If anyone has any questions, just put them in chat and me and my colleagues can answer them. If not, you can drop off. Thank you all for attending. I hope it was helpful, and this session is being recorded, so you can download it if you require. But again, thank you for attending. If you do need any help, again, just drop us an email.